is Monday, March 8th, and it is time to check our bell work. So hopefully your bell work is all the way done and you're just coming back on here to check your work. And again, make sure that you make those corrections. If you have any questions, if you're not sure why something's wrong, write yourself a little note on here and you can ask me about it when I get to see you next. All right, so lots of nice little review problems here, and then we're gonna look at some patterns that are shown by this. But for number one, we have 3/4 times 18. So I would have put a 1 underneath this 18 because it's easier to see the numerator and denominator, and then ask myself, can I cross simplify? And with 4 and 18, you can. I know 4 doesn't go into 18, but 2 goes into both of those. So I would divide them both by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So 3 times 9 is what we're left with, and that's 27, and 2 times 1 is 2. All right. Now, I know that, let's see here, 2 goes into 20 10 times, and then I need 2, 4, 6. I can fit 6 more, so 13 times. 2 times 13 will give me 26, and there's 1 more to 27, and my denominator stays the same. So 13.5 is what you should have for number 1. For number 2, I have 2/3 times 3 3/5. I would go ahead and change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So 2/3 times 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18/5. And now let's ask ourselves, can we cross simplify? Well, I see 3 and 18, we sure can. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 18 6 times. So 2 times 6 is 12, and 1 times 5 is 5. 5 goes into 12 twice, with 2 left over out of 5. So 2 and 2/5 is what you should have for number 2. And now for number 3, I have 1 3/4 times 2 1/2. I need to change both of those. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7/4 times 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5/2. Now I look and I see 4 and 5, I can't do anything, and 7 and 2, I can't do anything. So we just have to multiply across. 7 times 5 is 35, and multiply across. 4 times 2 is 8. And I'm gonna ask myself, 8 times what gets me closest to 35? And 8 times 4 is 32. 32, 33, 34, 35. There's 3 left over to get to that 35 out of 8. So 4 and 3/8 is what you should have. All right, cruising along. Number 4, 14 times 3/7. I'm gonna put my 1 underneath that 14, so I have a numerator and a denominator, and I look to cross simplify, and I can. 7 and 14. 7 goes into 7 once, 7 goes into 14 twice. So I'm left with 2 times 3, which is 6. 1 times 1 is 1, and 6 divided by 1 is 6. So we get an answer of 6. Number 5, I have a mixed number, so let's change that to improper. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16/3, times 3/4. And this is one of those nice ones where you can cross simplify in both diagonals. 3 goes into 3 once and once, and 4 goes into both 4 and 16. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 16 4 times. So I'm left with 4 times 1 is 4, 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 is my final answer for that one. All right, number 6, let's change this to to an improper fraction. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 5 is 35/6 times 1/5. And now, yes, I can definitely cross simplify here. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 35 7 times. So 7 times 1 is 7, 6 times 1 is 6, and 6 goes into 7 one time with 1 left over to get to that 7 out of 6. So 1 and 1/6. And again, for all of these, if you didn't cross simplify, it's fine. You just end up having to simplify at the end instead. Okay, now we're into some division here. And this is 3 divided by 4. Okay, so you have 3 whole. You're dividing each into 4 pieces, and you want 1/4 of those. So really what you have is 3 times 1/4. You have 1/4 3 times, which is 3/4. For number 8, 1/8 divided by 9. Like this means like you have 1/8 of a cake and you're sharing it with 9 people. How much of the whole cake would each person get? Well, we saw that to get this result, we can do 1/8 times 1/9. So this was 9/1. I can do the opposite operation and then the opposite of that number. And 1/72. It's a very little piece of cake, unless it was a really super huge cake to start. For number 9, 1/7 divided by 9. I can take 1/7 and multiply it by the reciprocal of that, and I would get 1/63. Okay, Oops, sorry, there you go. Now you can see it. For number 10, I'm taking 3 and I want to know how many 1/4 pieces are there in 3? Well, there are 4 1/4 pieces in 1. So in 3, there would be 3 times 4. So again, I'm multiplying by the opposite of 1/4, which is 4, if you flip those around. 4 over 1 is 4, right? So we get 12. 12 divided by 1/3, that is the same as 12 times what? Reverse that, 12 times 3, which is 36. And 40 divided by 1/5 is the same as 40 times the opposite of that, which would be 5. And for this, remember those multiples of 10. I can do the 5 times 4, which is 20, and then multiply by that 10, which when we multiply by 10, we see that we just put the 0. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to scooch my paper. I'm just so focused in on what I'm doing. Okay, so now I ask you to look at some patterns down here. And the first one says, and I know we talked about this in class quite a bit, but we need to, like, the first time you hear something, it usually takes a bit before it locks in. So we're gonna keep talking about it, and then it's gonna just become like something natural and second nature to you. Multiplying by a number greater than 1 gives a blank result. So it just so happens that the first 3 problems I gave you, we are taking a factor and multiplying it by a number greater than 1, okay? And when I say multiplying by a number, that means in all of these, your second factor, what you were multiplying the first factor by was greater than 1. So 18 is greater than 1, 3 3/5 is greater than 1, and 2 1/2 is greater than 1. So when you compare the number that you start with your end result, when we multiply by a greater than 1, by a number greater than 1, isn't 13 1/2 greater than 3/4? Yes. And 2 2/5 is greater than 2/3. And 4 3/8 is greater than 1 3/4. So if you multiply by a number greater than 1, it gives you a greater result. Right? We end up with more than what we started with. So when you multiply by a number greater than 1, you get an amount that's greater than what you start with. Now, the second set, 4, 5, and 6, I give you examples of this. It says multiplying by a fraction less than 1 gives a blank result. Now, in 4, 5, and 6, the number that you multiplied by, so here's our first factor, right, 14. The number I multiplied by is 3/7. 3/7 is less than 1. And I got an answer that is less than what I started with. 6 is less than 14. For number 5, we multiplied by a number less than 1. And notice my product 4 is less than what I started with. And for number 6, I multiplied by 1/5, which is less than 1, and I got an answer that was less than what I started with. So multiplying by a fraction, that fraction less than 1, gives a lesser result. You're gonna end up with less than what you start with. Okay, for number 15, it says dividing by a number greater than 1 gives a blank result. Now look at 7, 8, and 9. In 7, 8, and 9, I have you dividing by a number that is greater than 1, right? 4 is greater than 1, 9 is greater than 1, 9 is greater than 1. So look at what we have started with here. We start with 3, and we get a quotient of 3/4. 3/4 is less than 3. And here, 1 over 72 is less than 1/8, right? These are much bigger pieces than those. And 1 over 63 is less than 1/7. So when you divide by a number greater than 1, which is what we did for 7, 8, and 9, you get a lesser result. And that's kind of what we're used to, right? We're used to when you multiply, you get a greater result, and when you divide, you get a lesser result. But now we're seeing when we have fractions included that sometimes if you multiply, you can get a lower result than what you started with. That's because when you have a fraction, you have less than 1 of what you started with. All right, now let's look at the last set. Dividing by a fraction less than 1 gives a. Now look at 10, 11, and 12. 1/4 is less than 1, 1/3 is less than 1, 1/5 is less than 1. And every single one of these, when I divided by, okay, so you have your number you start with, when I divided by a number that was less than 1, I got a result greater than what I started with. Do you see that? 3 divided by 1/4 is 12. 12 is more than 3. This 36 is more than 12. 200 is definitely more than 40. So even though it's division, if you're dividing by a fraction less than 1, you're going to get a greater result than what you've started with. All right, you're set with your bell work for today. Thanks so much for watching.